Welcome to lesson number 8 of Mastering Positional Techniques, and today we're gonna cover a very interesting and very important topic, which is working with the king. And the first concept we have in front of us is artificial castle. Take a look at this position. If you want a castle right away here with black, it would be a very bad idea because bishop on d2 is taking this pawn on h6. So here, Grandmaster Triev, who was playing with black pieces, decides to move his king to g7 square. Not even, moving it first, take a castle, and then king g7, but place king f8. So that pawn on h6 stays protected by our rook on h8. And now, both sides have chances. Queen b6. Queen a2, and as you might see, there is no attack that white might try. Yeah, they have chances to potentially go h4, h5, but at some point, if let's say they try h4, first of all, our bishop still covers it, and we might start this attack ourselves here, because h4 is not playable, and h5, h4, just to push the knight away from Jiffy, and that's what we covered in other lessons, I believe, maybe in the first one, when we were talking about playing against the knight, and knight on g3 usually, allows this h5, h4, or if knight on g6, h4, h5, and we're trying to push the knight away. So here black played king g7, protecting pawn on h6, bishop c4, queen d4, bishop b3, and now h5. That's what we covered in previous lessons. Rook e d1, queen b6, and both sides have chances. Now let's take a look at the next game, and once again, surprisingly, it was played again by Grandmaster Triev with black pieces, and here it's slightly different. So the thing here is, now black can castle, and it looks like there are no immediate threats, but if the castle is going to happen, unfortunately for black pieces, there is a very, very strong queen f4, and black either have to play knight f6 or f5. So let's say knight f6 attacking the queen on e4, now queen goes to h4, and there are all different possibilities, including bishop h6, now e takes f6 is a threat, and black's position doesn't look that great. But in the starting position, instead of going for castle, Triev goes for the same king f8 maneuver. Now he wants to move g6 and play king g7, and that's what we see on the board. h4 is played. Now bishop is on not only 7 as we saw in the previous example. Knight is on f3, not on g3. So now we have different things to think of right now. g6. Now, we stay solid, we want to go king g7. If h5 is played, we just push g5, and that's what we will see later in the game. Knight h2. So we have two active bishop on c5 and b7. White are trying to go knight g4 and attack h6 square. Bishop d4, now rook b1, rook d8, knight f3 returns back. I mean, knight g4 doesn't lead to anything because king g7 and the pawn, alright, you can take it, but I'll have two pieces for the rook. Bishop c5, rook c1, king goes to g7, rook c2, knight d7, h5, and here after knight f5, bishop f4, g5, Triev took the initiative. Now we will go to the next concept, which is evacuating your king, precautionary evacuating your king, because sometimes it might get dangerous. Let's get to it. So the second concept is precautionary evacuation of the king. So let's take a look at this position from the black side. Whites are very, very active. They want to potentially go g4, g5. They have a pin on h file, so this pawn on g5 won't be taken. And so we play against this idea, and we also try to maybe, because as you might see, that's the closed structure, probably occurred from the French defense. And one of the ideas here is to move your king to the safety to the queen side. You play king d7, not an artificial castle yet, but it will eventually happen. Now g4 is happening on the board, knight goes to e7, and now g5 is not played because queen now protects h8 rook, knight goes to d2, queen e8, bishop a3, and king c7, and we kinda got our king to the safe place. We attack the pawn on a4, there are not a lot of, white have a lot of possibilities, they're technically better, but at least our king is not on the king side, where, it would be just like a straight attack, f4, f5, f6 over, while on c7 it feels itself quite great. Yeah, bishop g6, but one check is nothing, close structure. White don't really have anything concrete right now. Let's take a look at the second example, which is, again, was played in the game by Nimzovich and Berger. So here, the situation is interesting, because king is already castled on the king side. And as we saw, let's say in the previous example, what might happen, f4, f5, f6. Here, h4, g5, and the rest is coming. So you gotta do something with your king. If it continues staying here, it will be a disaster. So, but now, of course, pawn e5 is also hidden, so black played knight d7. Now white respond with h4, trying to push g5. Now black played f6. After bishop c1 preparing for g5 push, black played king f7. And again, you have a close structure, e5, d4, c5, beautiful pawn triangle, and this king is slowly moving to b8. After g5 takes rook h8, the plan is very simple. King goes to e7, d6, c7, b8, and then black might consider going for b5, c4, and start counterattacking on the queen side. And the other thing to mention is this king will probably have to move from g1 as well, because, if white try to open everything on the king side, there might be a lot of troubles on g-file and h-file. Now let's get to the next concept of this lesson. The next concept is either you have to take, let's say on g6, on g3, on b3, on b6, with h or f pawn. And, it's usually a good question. Most of the time you take with h take g6, because from early childhood, I was told the same thing. You gotta take closer to the center. F pawn, if you take with F pawn, it's actually from the opposite way to the center, so you gotta take with the H pawn. But I'll show you a couple of examples played in the last century by very strong, renowned chess players. And we will start by looking at this example. Alekhine was playing against Akiba Rubinstein. Rubinstein plays bishop g6. That's the maneuver we analyzed in the previous lesson, that bishop zigzag and white's needed. So basically the idea of white to remove the active bishop from white's position and trade it for not so good bishop, because it doesn't really do anything on this long h5 d1 diagonal. Takes, and now here Akiba Rubinstein doesn't play h takes g6, but instead plays f takes g6. And the idea is he won a castle and wants to have open f file. White goes knight b3, g5, taking the f4 square from f2 pawn, because imagine if f4 is going to happen, it might be a very, very unpleasant position to play as black. Bishop e3, now castle, knight f3, pin d7, pin d2, and here black delivered a final blow, rook f3, g takes f3, knight f5, attacking the pawn on f3, and after queen e2, rook f8. Soon Rubinstein ended up winning this chess game. Later, Alekhine, inspired by this maneuver in the following game, now there's knight on g6, doesn't matter, bishop g6, he decided not to go for h takes g6, which was actually better in this specific case. But he played f takes g6. He was like, alright, Akiba Rubinstein just destroyed me. I want to do the same thing against Spielman. h3, bishop f5, knight d4. Here, it's slightly different situation. And, f takes g6 is probably too much, I believe. But nevertheless, game ended in a draw. Knight f5, rook f5. Queen e2, rook df8, and now at least, black got some counterplay, semi-open f-file, king potentially goes h6, king h7, so both sides have chances, but the game finished in a draw. And let's get to the final concept of this lesson. And the final concept of today's lesson is attack on h-file, and that's probably the one that a lot of you use on daily basis in your rapid bullet games. And that's the thing that top champs are doing every single time. So here, white to play, and they start their attack by playing h4. The plan is very simple. They want to push h5, they want to push h6, and eventually bring their knight to the action and checkmate black's king. Knight c5, knight h2, bring their pieces to the action, rook d5, h5, king h8, h6, and white got a very significant advantage. In the second example, we will be watching from the black side. We have a locked center, but here black have a couple of interesting ideas, and they start attack on h-file by playing h5. And now white should have locked the center and the whole attack by playing g5. At least after g5, I mean, you don't lose by force, but after g takes h5, which they played, now the position is simply collapsing. Rook h8, we sacrifice another pawn, and after h takes g6, bishop c8, the pawn on h3 is now attacked. White play d4. They're trying to do something. I mean, we could even play c takes d4, simple, doesn't matter. But here, bishop h3. And after d5, attacking the knight, black played queen c8, and white simply resigned because they don't have enough threats, and the attack on g-file is on h-file is just insanely strong. Black could win even easier by playing bishop g2 if king g2 is played, then queen d7 or queen c8, doesn't matter, and queen g4 is coming, and checkmate is about to be followed. Rook h1, queen g4, that's the only suggestion computer has right now, which already tells you how lost this position is. Guys, I hope you enjoyed, I hope you understand this concept, I hope you learned something new, because I think this is very helpful. If you don't learn, you at least kind of, it's in your head, and eventually you will see how it kind of transposes to your games as well. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next week with another lesson. Bye bye.